So let's get to it, General. Senator Lindsey Graham today indicated the president plans to launch land operations inside Venezuela as well as Colombia, saying that Trump will brief Congress when he returns from Asia. There is speculation he intends to topple Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. So here are three questions. What are the implications of the aircraft carrier being sent there? What are your concerns about this escalation without congressional authorization? And what about Trump targeting the president of another nation?
What a trio of questions. Look, this is an unusual situation of dubious legality to use the U.S. Armed Forces in an active confrontation with what essentially is a criminal operation. In the past, we have used federal law enforcement, the DEA in particular, these magnificent men and women of the DEA. We've used the Coast Guard. We've let the court system adjudicate. We've had to collect evidence before we seized or arrested people or material. All that's by the wayside. Congress, as a general statement, does not take part in military operations overseas. They just don't do it. The War Powers Act supposedly would constrain a president. In fact, it almost gives him latitude to conduct operations as he wished. So I don't think this is going to have a major impact on drug smuggling into the United States, for starters. If you really want to cut down on the availability of cocaine, you get Colombia in particular to agree to do aerial eradication of crops. Interdiction is important, but it's only a minor piece of the equation.
What do you think just the interpretation is of sending that aircraft carrier? It's the biggest one in the fleet, the USS Gerald R. Ford. Sending it there to the waters, what's the message with that?
Well, it's hard to tell. I do not believe we will conduct land operations inside Venezuela or Colombia. If we did, it would be incredibly high risk. It would be a stupid move. It would organize support for Maduro, not decrease it. If you go after Colombia, a democratic state, an ally in the past, with a leftist president now who has supervised a massive increase in cocaine production, none of these really respond to an aircraft carrier, which is built for lethal warfighting operations in a contested environment. There isn't much of a military left in Venezuela. Militias on the coast is all nonsense. So those aren't the tools you use if you're serious about reducing drug production. Now, the legality question is an incredibly complex one. I think in the short run, Trump administration has said we're going to do the same kind of analogy legally that we did on terrorist organizations. Congress has again refused to ask. The Senate could not face up to authorization of the use of military force. So in a vacuum, Trump is acting.
In faith in the leader at the Pentagon. What is the danger in this, not only for the morale in the military, but for all of us Americans?
I think the danger is you have a force that doesn't trust its leader, and it's the force that's responsible for waging our wars, protecting our homeland, and is currently involved in a number of escapades around the globe. It's significant because it's the Washington Times, and it's happening at the same time where Hegseth is trying to consolidate essentially a propaganda machine at the Pentagon. He's removed the Pentagon press corps, unprecedented, dangerous, outrageous, and he's now replacing them with folks like reporters from InfoWars. So he's trying to consolidate his propaganda machine, unify their message, remove any opposition, any questions, because he also knows that the calls are coming from inside the House. These are people who don't trust him, don't believe in him, and people who used to work for him. So I think his chaos and his discombobulation and his incompetence is starting to pile up.
Yeah. So, Tim, to that end, are there cracks seeming to emerge in the support for Hegseth, and how far could that trickle up? Would the White House at some point say enough is enough?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think this is definitely, in a weird way, this coming out of the Washington Times is something that makes Pete Hegseth more vulnerable than if it would have come from a mainstream outlet. We're in this weird upside-down place. It's kind of like that movie Men in Black, where you have to read the National Enquirer to get the real news about the aliens. So we're kind of there now. You have to read the far-right MAGA news to know what people are really thinking inside the White House in a lot of cases. And the fact that they would speak to an outlet like that to complain means that these are probably people inside the military who are maybe even sympathetic to Trump, but want just more competent leadership and are trying to send a signal to him and a message to him. And we've seen this in the past. There was a similar situation with a Trump appointee at that time, I think, leaked to Politico. But I think the fact that these complaints are coming from kind of inside the not just the military, but inside kind of the right-wing ecosystem means that, it's something that makes him actually vulnerable.
Yeah, and we know the president pays attention to news, especially right-wing outlets. The sort of issues that have been cited in the Washington Times or Hegseth's fixation on facial hair, press access. Is all of this going to play well with the commander-in-chief, with the president, who does tend to do his own nitpicking and kind of pick up on the culture wars, or is this going to become a distraction at some point?
I think it could go both ways. But I think it's a really vulnerable moment for Hegseth right now. On the one hand, there was a firestorm around him initially that I think that he survived because he basically made the case to the president like they're coming after me, like they're coming after you, and we're going to go after the fake news. And so that's why I think that this is interesting. Now that these complaints are not really coming from somebody that they can turn into a boogeyman, right? Like this is coming from military leaders. This is coming from a right-wing media outlet. And so, at some point, all of that bad press starts to pile up, and Trump doesn't like it. And we've seen this time and again, going back to the first term, where he wants to defend his people for a little while against the media, but after a while, it's all about him. And if they're taking on too much water, he starts to look to move on.
So, Paul, is it rare to see members of the military starting to utilize the channels to seem to get the president's attention, this anonymous reporting? Is there any other method that the rank and file, that senior officials could actually use, senior officers, I should say, could use to try to push back on Hegseth's agenda?
Yeah, and I think they're picking their spots. I think folks want to hear generals walking out or resigning their commissions. That's not happening, but they're picking their spots. And the resignation or removal of the head of Southern Command, who oversees Venezuela, is a very significant development, right? That's an example of a pushback, or at least a friction point. And I think Tim touches on something else important. Hegseth makes it all about him. And that's what you're not supposed to be. He's not supposed to be the star of this show. Our troops are supposed to be the star of the show. And he continues to put himself in that role. And what I'm hearing from folks who are close to Trump is that Hegseth is actually slowing the president down. Imagine how much farther ahead Trump's agenda would be if Hegseth wasn't screwing.
These voices are important. Trump does, he is shocked whenever somebody pushes back. And this is what I've been saying to everybody. Push back. It's not always going to be easy, and sometimes you're going to have to do it more than once or twice. But Trump wants to push and have you cower. This is what I've been saying from Canada here. What I've been saying, like Canadian leaders from the Liberal Party and the Conservative Party, not the NDP, but the Liberals and Conservatives, have let Trump push them around. Right? And too many forces in the United States have let Trump push them around. Not everybody, of course. We've seen some governors, for example, Pritzker, Newsom, they've pushed back. But when people don't push back, it just gets worse and worse and worse. Don't obey in advance. And to see these big military names push back, and I know a lot of them are retired, but the point is, retired generals don't talk about current commanders-in-chief like this generally, because there's still a fundamental respect and reverence for the office in question, and the man, or one day the woman, the person who holds it, right? And so for them to speak like this, it really underlines that, like, Trump threatened the military, he threatened decency, he threatened journalistic independence of the military, all of that. And people are speaking out, saying this is not normal. This is not a disagreement on tactics. This is not, one general thinks we should launch an operation tonight and one person thinks we should wait 48 hours. Like the, practical, experiential, tactical differences of opinion and expertise. Trump is sounding like a 1930s little mustache guy. That's what he's sounding like, and what Hegseth is sounding like sometimes. That's what their speeches and their rhetoric and their actions in some cases echoes, if not imitates. And you need to have people push back.